Hi everybody, welcome to another crochet tutorial with me, Laura, and in this video I'm going to be introducing you to Freeform Crochet. So have you ever heard of Freeform Crochet? It may be completely new to you, you may have never heard of it, but basically the idea is you just crochet. You don't follow any pattern, any technique, any sort of formation or anything. You just get really creative and have some artistic fun and just crochet for the sake of crocheting. And in this video, I really want to show you some techniques to create a beautiful piece like this, similar to this, and help you learn the biggest challenge, which is getting it to stay flat. So that's all about increasing in the right place and decreasing in the right place, and just sort of introduce you to some ideas of adding little extra bits or doubling back on yourself, things like that. And you may be asking, okay, that all sounds lovely and artistic, but what is the point? Well, first of all, the point is it's a really meditative practice. It's super fun when you just don't know what to crochet and you just want to crochet for the sake of crocheting and have some fun. And these make some really beautiful placemats or really cool bath mats, so they definitely have a use in themselves. This would make an absolutely wonderful plant pot. I have some plants here. Let's bring one over. So there we go. It would make a really beautiful plant placemat. So let's begin, shall we? So the first thing you want to do is choose your yarns. Now I've opted for some nice chunky bulky weight yarns. I think these are a yarn weight of 5 or 6. So just literally grab anything from your stash. You can use different weight yarns if you want to. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to be consistent. I've tried to go a little bit consistent. I've created a bit of a color scheme here with the blues and the grays and kept all the weight the same. And with that, I'm using a hook that's suitable for this yarn weight, which is a J 6mm crochet hook, but you can use any hook as well. So this is what I call an AHA project, any hook, any yarn project. So the first thing to do is to just start off your crochet piece, and you can do it in 2 different ways. You can start off with a long piece like this or a circle. So I'm going to show that to you now. So although this is a tutorial, I strongly suggest you not copying exactly what I'm doing, because this is all about getting creative and just doing what makes your heart sing. But we're going to start off with a slip knot, and then we're just going to make some chains. So we can make as many chains as we like. I'm not even going to count. I'm not even going to write this down. There's no pattern. Which is really hard for a designer to do. This is why I recommend this a lot for crochet designers, to let go of having to write things down and make a note. And I'm going to work consistently with the single crochet. Like this piece has all been done with the single crochet. So that's in US terms. That's a double crochet in UK terms. You can mix and match your stitches. You can get really creative. But I recommend, if you've never done this before, to just start out with the single crochet. So I'm going to go into my second chain from my hook and make a single crochet. And I'm going to single crochet along. Now I could go all the way to the end, or I could get really creative and just I could stop like halfway and maybe add some more chains. So we'll add a few little extra chains there and do the same thing. Just go into the second chain from your hook, and in the chains, the next chain. And then when you get back to the main piece, I'm just going to go straight into that next chain on the main piece. So this creates a kind of sort of triangle shape. And that's your first stage like that. And then what we're going to do is we want to work in the round. You can go backwards and forwards every so often. We're going to start off working in the round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work back into these chains and get myself back over here. Now this is where the first technique comes in to making sure your work stays flat. So what you want to do is, when you're going around a corner, you're going to want to add extra stitches. And the rule of thumb is if your stitch is at an angle, So if this is the top facing in this direction, we can quite clearly see that our stitch is right over here, whereas we want it flat up here. So we're going to add extra stitches until our stitch lies flat. So we added another one there. You can see it's still at an angle. So going to add another stitch. And now you can see that that stitch is horizontal with that direction. Same thing again, we're turning our work like this, and now it's at an angle again. So we want to add more stitches. So this is where and why we need to increase. So I'm going to add a couple until our stitch sits in the direction that we want to go. And that should stay flat. And then we're going to work back into these chains. So I'm going to move my tail end out the way and go into that next chain. If this is a little bit complicated, you can just start with a normal circle. I'm going to go into the next chain. And then you can see we have a corner. And when we get a corner like this, this is where we need to decrease. So I'm going to go into the next chain here, bring the yarn through, and go into the next chain, bring the yarn through, and then yarn over, pull through all three. And I've just single crocheted those two chains together. And as you can see, we're now going in this direction and our stitch is facing in the same direction. So we know we've done a really good decrease. And then we can carry along the edge to the end, back to the beginning. So this is the last one here. And of course, once we turn in this direction, we can see our stitch is facing the wrong angle. So we need to add extra stitches rather. Again, that's still at a little sort of 30-degree angle, so we add another one. And now we can see our stitch is horizontal in the same direction we're crocheting. So there we go, and that was the end of our first round like that. So what we can do now is we can carry on with the same color, or we could add a new color if you want to get experimental. So let's add a different blue. And you can join the rounds or you can just continue in the round. I'm just literally going to join a new color. So obviously we're going to turn our work, and again we can see our stitch is facing the wrong direction. So we need to add extra stitches. But we're going to go into that first single crochet now and add some extra stitches. So we're going to go into there. Instead of yarning over with the turquoise, I'm going to yarn over with this other blue and add a single crochet in there. And again, the stitch is still at a wrong angle, so we'll add another stitch in the same stitch until our stitch is facing the right direction. So it's still at the wrong angle, maybe add another. And we can now see that it sits in the same direction as these stitches, so we have enough. So it should sit flat. And we can continue along here if we want to, up to this corner. Now this is an interesting corner because we added some chains here, if you remember, added chains and then single crocheted into those chains. So when we get to here, we've got one stitch left here, and because it's a corner, we want to single crochet some stitches together. So I'm going to single crochet the next normal stitch. Then I'm going to find that chain. So this is a chain here. I'm going to go into there, yarn over, pull through all three to double crochet those two together. And then we do have one more chain hidden in there. You can add a stitch in there. And then we need to start working back into these normal stitches here. But as you can see, our stitch is at the wrong angle to where we want to be. We want it to be in this direction, not this direction. So we're going to add extra stitches until it sits flush, almost flush. That's good enough. Then we can go into the next proper stitch over here And of course, we're crocheting in this direction, and we can see our stitch is at a weird angle. So we're going to add more stitches until it's flush. I think that's okay. And then we actually have a corner here. And to me, this looks almost like I want to double crochet 3 together. So you can experiment, go in the next stitch, into the next stitch, and into the next stitch. Pull through all 4 loops. And then I've single crocheted those 3 together. And you can see it growing, and you can see that it's sitting nice and flat because we've added the right extra stitches in the right place and we've decreased in the corners. So now we carry along to the end. But it's really important not to get just carried away with working in the round. Remember to be creative, so we can add some extra techniques. So I could add some more chains here, for example, like so, and go into the second chain for my hook and single crochet back to my project. And then in that last chain, and then we go into the next stitch here. Okay. And so we're crocheting in this direction, and we can see that it's at the wrong angle. So we're going to add a little extra stitch in there. So we're facing the right direction, and then carry on. And then we have a new detail here that we can crochet into those chains again the next time around, just like we did on this first bit here. And you may want to add stuff the other side as well. So let's continue back to the beginning. Always turning, checking your stitches are facing the right direction. This one isn't, so I need to add more. Okay, still at a bit of an angle, so I'm going to add another one. That's good. And then carry on in the correct direction. And sometimes you reach a corner. So here's quite a gentle corner. So I'm probably just going to double crochet 2 stitches together. Okay, and then you can see my stitch is in the right direction, so I can carry on. 2 was enough. Back to the beginning. Again, adding extra stitches as we go around the corner. And we are back at the beginning. Okay, so this is what our little piece looks like. It looks like a kind of strange little animal, little weird amoeba. So we can introduce a new color if we want to. We can add, maybe, I won't add white because that doesn't show up well on camera. Maybe we do like a gray. And I think this angle, so I need to add an extra stitch there. So let's just add an extra stitch there. Then we're going to go into the next stitch, and I'm going to add my new color. So yarn over with the new color. And you can do neat joins. If you don't want a mixed join like that, where you get the different color on top, all you need to do is we go back to the previous stitch. As we work that last stitch, instead of yarning over with the same color, we yarn over with our new color. Bring that through. And then when we work our next stitch, you can see it's a perfect color change. So that's a little technique for adding new colors. So I'm just going to, maybe I add a little bit of detail here, a couple of extra stitches, a few chains, and then single crochet back to the main project. And I'll stitch. It's interesting here because I've added some extra chains, but we look at the original stitch here, it is at an angle, so we can go back into that same stitch and add an extra one. We always want to make sure we're crocheting in the right direction. And carrying along. up to the next corner. So we've reached a corner. We're going to double crochet 2 together, or 3 together, sometimes 4 together. It really depends. If I show you on here as a very good example, sometimes you get corners that are very, very tight, very sharp corners. And here I have actually crocheted 3 or 4 stitches together to really make sure I'm crocheting in the right direction, because you're crocheting in this direction, then you're crocheting in this direction. So you have to decrease quite a lot. But when you get like shallow little corners, you really only need to double crochet 2 together. And then we're going to go around the edge. I'm probably going to add some extra stitches. So always make sure you turn. So this is horizontal to you, and then see your stitches at the wrong angles. So we add more stitches. In fact, that's still at the wrong angle. So I'm going to add another. It's 3 in there. And then carry on. And we've got a bit of a corner here. So I think I shall double crochet 3 together, I think. It's quite a sharp corner. Like so. And then we're actually up to these chains here. So I want to go back, work back into these chains again. So I'm going to go into there. And into the next chain. And into the next chain. I can't actually remember how many chains we did. I think that was the last one. Maybe there's one more. Yeah. Okay, so we worked into those chains again on the opposite side. And then we're just going to work around the top. So I'm going to add extra stitch there. Then I go into that proper stitch. And always remembering to turn my work and check I have the right direction, have enough stitches, and carry on crocheting around. And here we got a corner. It's a fairly shallow corner, so I think I'll just double crochet 2 together. And then carry on. And every so often, just place your work down flat and just make sure it sits flat. And if it doesn't, you just need to, if it starts doing this, then you've got too many stitches and you need to go back and reduce that. And if it starts warping in a different way, you may need to add more stitches. So you just need to make sure it's flat. It's a very interesting shape I've got here. So another little technique is, let's just move along a little bit more around the edge. Again, always making sure to keep our work horizontal so we know where to add stitches. Okay. So let's say this little bit here. Okay, I need to add an extra stitch there. We can change directions. So this is another little fun, creative difference. So I'm just moving along here. And I could add more chains if I wanted to and add an extra long bit like this. Or what I could do is just completely change directions. Now, when you want to change direction, I recommend going into the next stitch and just doing a slip stitch like that. Then turning your work. And then skipping that slip stitch and going into that first single crochet with a single crochet. And that just creates a more finer point. It just looks a little bit nicer. And we can move in the opposite direction if we want to. And then we want to, if you want to move back in the opposite direction, we go into the next stitch with a slip stitch, turn, get all my yarn out of the way. We turn, we skip that slip stitch and go into the next stitch with a single crochet and work back in the opposite direction. Always remembering as well to make sure to keep your work horizontal. And you can see that one's at an angle, so I actually need to add an extra stitch there. There we go. So always check that. And then when you get to that stitch there. We're just going to work a single crochet in there. And then we go straight back into the blue stitch all the way down here. And this is actually a corner. So what I have to do actually is undo that and possibly do a little single crochet 2 together, because there's a little bit of a corner there. And just check that sits flat. And that adds a little chunky, little bit of color. You can see this on here where I've added some extra rows, just gone backwards and forwards. And it just creates a little bit of depth in the work. And then we just carry on back to the beginning and then add our next color. And that really is it. And I don't know where this new piece is going to go. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. And that's the fun of it. It's a really meditative process where all you have to do is just make sure to keep your work horizontal and make sure your stitches are horizontal and you know you are facing the right direction. And you know you have enough increase or decrease. And now we are back at the beginning. And there we go. We could add our next color if we wanted to. So there we go. That is just a really brief introduction into freeform crochet when working flat. There are lots of other techniques. So if you enjoyed this video, this introduction, and you'd like to know more, then just let me know in the comments below if you would like to see more experimental crochet. But thanks for watching, everyone. I really hope you give this a try, just to take some time out for something you're working on. It's a brilliant project to use up yarn scraps, and it can create some really funky placemats which look amazing on your table or as a bath mat, like I said. And if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Happy Berry Crochet, then do come and share your projects with me. I would love to see them. People are already sharing their freeform in the new Facebook group, which is Happy Berry Crochet Facebook group. So I'll put a link to that if you want to come join our little secret group and share your projects. But I'll see you soon for some more crochet crafting fun. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.